Hello, brothers and sisters. This is Sabata with the EQUATORIA Advocacy Foundation. I am the Director for Resource Mobilization and Project Management. Today, I would like to discuss with you an article. It's actually a case study that is produced by the African Journal of Political Science and International Relations, and you can find the link if you want to get this article. You type www.researchgate.net in YouTube, and you should be able to find this article. And this article talks about why Equatorial region in South Sudan may opt to secede. This article is actually produced back in October 2018. That's almost 2 years or 1 year and so many months. But there is something important that I would like to discuss in it. So basically, this is the article here. I'm going to see this article here. It says why Equatorial region in South Sudan may opt to secede, and the link is up here. That is, if you want to obtain it, you can Google that and you should be able to get it. All right. Basically, what I would like to the message that I would like to give out by discussing this is to clarify, to make people see how politics in South Sudan has always gone inconsistent with the desires of the people of Equatoria, how they want politics of South Sudan should be directed. Now, I'm going to start by reading a couple of lines and then breaking down into discussion. I'm going to start. Since the founding of South Sudan, first as a region, and then later as a country, first as a region and then country, the Dinka tribe has continued to exercise absolute control and domination. That's according to this writer. That's not according to me. That's according to this writer. Okay, I'm just going to be saying some stuff based on what this writer is saying. So basically, what this line is saying is that since the Southern Constituent has been formed as a region and also as a country, well, that gives you to think, when was the country formed as a region and then as a country? We know that when he talks about South Sudan Constituent formed as a region, he was basically talking about the regional autonomy that was given as a result of the Addis Ababa Agreement of 1972, and also as a country, that is when we obtained independence in 2011. He is saying, that's according to him, that the Dinka tribe has absolute control and domination. That is his opinion, even though I think that during the regional autonomy, that is when Southerners were constituted as a region, Dinka tribe did not have dominance at that time. There was pretty much balance of power, even though there was some politics that were played at the time when a Dinka person was president of the regional autonomy that has displeased the people of Equatoria, and that had resulted into the policy of the Kokora. Now, the case study was therefore based on the hypothesis that Dinga-led governments in South Sudan cannot accept any system of governance which will not leave them in charge of leadership of the country. And this will inevitably means unavoidably, push the Equatorians to opt to secede to form their own country. Whether you'll agree with it or not, that's not any point I'm trying to make here. Just as the Southerners felt that they had been handed over to a new colonial master when the British trusteeship of Sudan ended in 1956. Remember when the British had to leave and gave independence to Sudan, Southerners at the time found themselves under the rule of the North. And basically, according to this gentleman, he is saying, just as the Southerners at the time found themselves under new masters, that were the new masters were the Mundukurat and the older masters were the British. Just as that, he is basically saying here that the Equatorians also are feeling as though they have been handed over to another new master too, which of course in this sense to him, he meant the new masters are of course the government of the Dinga. That is what he is saying. But what is it that I'm really trying to discuss here? The light that I would like to shade here, of course, the gentleman continued. He made a very huge paper here giving reasons as to why he thinks Equatorians might end up deciding to opt out of what is called the southern constituent right now is basically a country, which is the South Sudan. Why he's saying why Equatorians might end up choosing to create an autonomy other than remaining in what is called South Sudan. He has given a lot of reasons. But then what I would like to shed here, the light that I would like to shed in this discussion is how indeed politics have always gone contrary to the desire of life of Equatorians. You see, it is very important for me to note at this point that what is called the Southern Constituent has not evolved. Okay, it has not evolved. What do I mean by saying it has not evolved? And if it has not evolved, then how did it end up to be how it is? It has actually been created. It's a political creation. It has not evolved because there has never been social forces that have attracted all the people who constitute Equatoria, all the people who constitute the Upper Nile, as it used to be known, the Upper Nile province, and the people who constitute what is called Bahar al-Ghazal, what used to be called the Bahar al-Ghazal province. There has not been any social forces or socio-economical or socio-cultural which are entangled into socio-political that have attracted these people together. These people ended up being together as a result of a political creation by the British. This is very important to note in the studies of social sciences or in the studies of political science. Because given there are no forces that have pulled them together to create harmony, and they have just been created politically, then that means there are also no social forces or socio-economical, socio-cultural forces that will maintain them together. And their differences will always be seen in the political arena, in the political fields. Because What is sociopolitics? So sociopolitics is basically managing your life from the socio-economical aspect and also from the socio-cultural aspect. Our lives from the socio-cultural and the socio-economical aspect are managed by the socio-political aspect. All right? So given there are no forces, social forces that have brought us together, then what does that then mean? That means that we will always have differences that needs to be carefully managed. Are we managing them carefully? I would say no. Why? Because now let me walk one by one. Because of the following reasons. Brothers and sisters, if you might have noticed that during the government of the regional autonomy, at a point it used to be said that the Hakuma bita Equatorians, because the Equatorians were dominant in the parliament, which was known as People's Regional Assembly, which also obtained the nickname Barlamanta Lago for a period of time, when Lago, for a period of time. During those days, yes, it used to be locally said. People can now say, yes, Hakuma Bita 1972, predominantly were Equatorians. But notice what the Equatorians have always, what kind of politics have they stood for during those days? At a point, Equatorians in the parliament has come up with the idea of not having that one parliament in Equatoria maintain everybody. They have come with an idea that let there be a parliament in Bahr al-Ghazal and let there be a parliament in Upper Nile province as well. So that political affairs of the people of Upper Nile will be deliberated in that parliament or assembly, and the affairs of Bahr al-Ghazal will be deliberated on that assembly, which is in Bahr al-Ghazal. Basically, what are they asking for? They are asking for what will be referred to right now as decentralization or devolution of powers. Note that very carefully. And this is what ended up being called the Kokora, Teksim. It was actually dividing powers of the assembly. Instead of centralizing it in Juba, let it be let it be fragmented. Assembly in Upper Nile and assembly in Bahr al-Ghazal province. Was that really a bad call? Yes, there were some politicians who were also worried about that, and they said, no, our enemies were the Munukurat. If we do that, this is what is called divide, and will easily be ruled like that. No, but we had one high executive council. That is the executory part of the government chamber. So basically, with those three parliaments, it is simply to administer, because the assembly is the legislative part of the government. It will pretty much just order people how they will be living, policies that will be governing people in that particular territory, be it Upper Nile province, Bahr al-Ghazal province, Equatoria province. This is pretty much what those assemblies will be doing. But if there are things of shared interest, of course it will be taken to the central, to Khartoum, through the High Executive Council. And the High Executive Council was not going to be divided. It was remaining the same. So note that it was the Equatorians who have come up with the idea of these divisions, which was named Kokora, which wasn't really bad politics. Let that be remembered in history. even our children who will be growing up and will be interested in knowing the history of South Sudan, that Kokora was basically asking that let there be separate parliaments instead of a single parliament in Juba. Let there be a parliament in Bahr al-Ghazal. Let there be a parliament in Upper Nile. Was that a bad call? Let us reason that from the education that we have today, from the knowledge that we have today. Was that a bad call? Many would agree that it wasn't a bad call. But let's see what happened. There was a resistance to that request. The people of Dinka tribe, Bahr al-Ghazal and Bor, were predominantly known to have objected to that. But the people of Nuer, or the other tribes who came from the Bahr al-Ghazal, from the Upper Nile province, didn't seem to say much about it. They basically didn't even care. But the tribe of Dinka and the Dinka who are coming from the Bor, which is of the Upper Nile, objected to that basically. And as a result of that, there has come a time when the way the policy was carried out, it was carried out. I would say if there is something that could have actually went wrong in that policy, it was the way it was carried out. All right, because the people of the Dinka found themselves being driven off from Juba, which I don't think the policy was designed to be executed like that. But that is how it ended up being executed. Anyways, but the most important thing to note at this point is the ideology of how the people of Equatoria has always desired what is called dissolution of powers, not to be centralized, but to give room, to give space for legislatures in different parts of this territory of the Southern Constituent, which I said earlier was created but not evolved by itself due to some social factors. That was at that time. There was a resistance because that policy was called. All right, 1983, that Southern autonomy was dissolved anyways. And we went through the time of the SPLM fight. Everybody in South Sudan participated in the war, be it Equatorians, be it people from the Upper Nile province, be it people from the Bahr al-Ghazal province. Now, when the war was brought to an end through a certain deal, and people voted for South Sudan, well, thanks to the SPLM war, which has created that platform for voting. What then is happening today is the people of Equatoria again called for federalism. And where is that call coming from? That call is coming from the same ideology, the same understanding that it is good for administration. For administrative purposes, it is good to have assemblies, or today it's called parliament. We are having parliaments. It is good to have parliaments in those territories. Today we are having 10 states. It is good to have those parliaments, but it is also good to have powers given to those parliaments to legislate lives of those people the way they want, and to also have a mechanism to enforce those legislative principles that will be brought in order to order those people, put them in order. That will then mean that a form of security that will have to be given or allowed to those states to manage the people, you know. And when I hear, first of all, the way this revitalized transitional government of national unity is getting formed, seriously, there is no devolution of powers. And when Natalia Oyed wrote that document in which he was basically making complaints that devolution of powers has been ignored and the idea of centralizing security is something that has been embraced and that the president Kiir wants to sign as to be the policies that are going to be injected as far as how we are going to be ordered in this revitalized transitional government of national unity, is worrisome. It is worrisome. Why? Because again, it is a rejection of devolution of powers. Now, if you guys realize very carefully, it is again going contrary to the ideology of the people of Equatorians whom have always called for the idea that people should be able to be given space to manage themselves freely without having central authority injecting or dictating how your life will be most of the time, or at least maintaining security central somewhere, and that security eventually fails, like what we are seeing right now in South Sudan, where the security, the power is centralized, and the security personnel are not even operating under good regulations or rules. They themselves are even carrying atrocities against the population, the local population. So again, Equatorians tend to find themselves trapped. You see, in the past, Equatorians, before even the Anyanya War, the Equatorians engaged in Anyanya War or established this Anyanya War, Anyanya 1, because they don't want the idea of centralizing power somewhere, and they feel as though they are not free to mitigate their lives. During the government of regional autonomy, again, through the same line of thinking, Equatorians have decided to put separate assemblies so that there will be no congestion in Juba Parliament. Let others manage themselves also freely, which I think they should have said, alhamdulillah, you people are generous. But surprisingly, some Dinka from Bahar Ghazal and Bor refused. Why do you refuse when you're being given a space to go and manage yourself in your own parliament? Why do you want to just stick with somebody else's to manage yourselves in a parliament when so much don't seem to be working out with you guys? What is it? Now again, as we are seeing right now, this revitalized transitional government of national unity, the way it's getting formed, clearly indicates that devolution of powers is not going to happen. This is where Equatorians again feel they are getting screwed. And for that reason, it brings along the line that this gentleman here has been discussing in his case study, that the Equatorians, imagine this was written in 2018. It was written in 2018, well, at least published in October 2018. I think that was just 1 month after the terms of the revitalized transitional government of national unity. Those terms have already been signed because they were signed in September 12th, 2018. So that was just roughly 1 month after that was signed. Imagine he said this before this this revitalized transitional government of national unity was created. And now, as it is getting created, the devolution of powers, again, is not being seen. Again, it's putting Equatorians to feel as though they're getting screwed. Why is this very important to know? It's very important to know so that down the road, if the voice that supports this argument erupts and becomes clear and becomes louder, this is because, yes, the people of Equatorians are feeling as though they are getting squashed. It is always good to study ourselves as we live and understand our ideologies. The people of Equatoria like to be under freedom. After all, it is only in devolution of powers, this is where the essence of freedom will come to be. Right now, as we are seeing the revitalized transitional government of national unity is getting formed, and it looks like the president right now is refusing the idea of devolution of powers. Yani, in other words, parliaments are allowed in states, but powers are not given to them. It's useless. Will that be the case if the presidency was in the hands of somebody like Dr. Riek Machar, or if the presidency was in the hands of Thomas Cirillo? Will somebody like Keir, for example, object to the idea of devolution of powers? I'm sure he will be the first to say, let's go for devolution of powers. But because power is in his hands, he objects to it. But is he going to be there forever? Tomorrow, next tomorrow, it might go to somebody else who comes from a territory other than his territory. Maybe he may not be around at that time. But how about those who are supporting his policies today? Are they not going to call for devolution of powers? How about if it gets objected and if it gets to be said, oh, well, when some times back, devolution of powers was called, you guys were acting up. Even when the revitalized transitional government of national unity was created, it was not created on devolution of powers. Why are you calling for it now? So, basically, I don't want to go there, otherwise it will take me out of what I am trying to communicate here. But I hope at this time I have clarified, I have painted the picture, as you might have seen consistently, how the Equatorians have been trying their best on the idea that let there be freedom. That is, when you create, and they have started that since the time of the regional autonomy, when they said, let there be an assembly in Upper Nile province, let there be an assembly in Bahr al-Ghazal province. This will give, and let there be an assembly in Juba. This will give these people atmosphere, the freedom to legislate their ways of life the way they want in their place. And you call it Kokora. What is wrong with that? But this is just decentralization of powers, so that you don't get congested in one place and then kind of beat your heads back and forth. All right? And then you have a very small federal government on the top that will manage your shared interest. Is there anything wrong with that? This is something that has always been requested. Anyways, brothers and sisters, I hope we don't get to that point, but again, as I've said, if we happen to get to the point of what this gentleman is saying, at least you should know where it's coming from. No. Let us study the way we are interacting with each other. These people have consistently, these people who are being, because I'm basically analyzing this case study here. So these people here, these Equatorians, have consistently portrayed their stances. They always want that freedom. They want في زمن بتاع حكومة بتاع Addis Ababa agreement, separation of these assemblies so that the powers eventually will be given to those assemblies to manage lives of political affairs, socio-cultural and socio-economical affairs bita nas bita mahaldag. And eventually giving powers means also giving security powers, because many legislative resolutions cannot be imposed without security. I've never seen something like that. Any legislative policy gets imposed by mechanism to enforce laws. That is by security or police. And when I'm talking about security, I'm referring to general, including the police. All right. So I hope I have created the image where politics have always gone contrary to the stances of the desires of political views of the Equatorians. And fellow Equatorians, note this, realize this, for the younger ones who would be interested in understanding the politics of the Equatorians, or understanding how Equatorians have always evolved. Equatorians have always evolved with a clear line of thinking, but always there has not been that atmosphere where their lines or their ways of seeing things find a platform where it can thrive. All right. Thank you very much. God bless you. This is Sabata again from the EQUATORIA Advocacy Foundation. If you want to read more about this article, as I've said earlier, you can Google www.researchgate.net. Thank you very much. God bless you. Until we meet again in another video, stay safe and take care of yourself from the COVID-19. God bless you.